Two for the price of one, posted by Golfing Dan. So I was laid off. No big deal, right? It happens. But in this instance, it's a little different. I was working at a tech startup and was one of the early employees. I was one of the key people to develop their technology, which significantly helped them enable to raise tens of millions of dollars. I was told early on that they would basically take care of me as the company grew. Well, for a time at least, the company grew leaps and bounds. Again, much in part to the excellent tech I helped develop. Yet the company had little concern for little old me. Meanwhile, they brought on a bevy of new managers and high-level people, and yet my career was basically stagnant while I was there. But then, things started to slow down due to economic conditions. There'd been a couple of layoffs, and I figured it was probably time to leave the sinking ship. So, I lined up a new position at another company. I then went into my manager and told him that it seemed like more layoffs were imminent and that I had secured a job offer at another company. I asked him if it would be a good idea if I should take it, and he said that he would let me know. A couple of days later, after he had discussed things with our CEO, they said I was okay and not to take the other position. I turned down the other position because I had invested so much of myself into this company, even having sold my house and moved hundreds of miles to work at this company. And I still had a lot of stock options that I was hoping would be worth something someday. Literally a couple of weeks later, guess what? Yep, they laid me off. Now, that other position was no longer available, and because this was at the height of the recession, I was out of work for 4 months until I found another position. I could have even lost my house during this time, and I had to sell some cool stuff to keep paying the bills. The new position I finally found was much further from home and was a financial hardship. I would have been better off if they had just been honest with me and told me to take the offer I had had in hand previously. But honesty wasn't ever their policy. Anyhow, before I was involuntarily separated from the company, I was working with a Fortune 500 company that was trying to partner with us on some technology. After leaving, I got wind that they were going to invest $15 million in the company. That bothered me for several reasons, mostly because most of us were pretty sure that the crooked CEO was pilfering the company for personal gain. I'm thinking that this guy shouldn't be rewarded for his atrocious management of the company, and honestly, I didn't think that it would be a wise investment for this large company. I contacted my inside guy at the Fortune 500 and told him some of my concerns about the stewardship of the money at the startup and that it wasn't really a wise investment. This company was looking for a distribution deal for our technology, so I told them the best use of their money would be to make a deal to exchange a large blanket purchase order for stock. This way, the startup company would still get a big chunk of investment money coming in, but they would have to perform for it. It's the difference between giving a kid an allowance for no reason at all, or giving a kid an allowance based on if they did their chores or not. I didn't necessarily want the investors to walk away from a partnership because I had many friends still at the company and didn't want to see them out in the cold. So my thought was that this was a type of deal that would keep the company afloat while minimizing the potential for pilfering and better protecting the investment. All in all, if structured right, it could be a win-win and make it much more difficult for the crooked CEO and his cronies to loot the company. I additionally told them that I wouldn't recommend investing a penny unless they got a seat on the board of directors. That way, they would have first-hand knowledge of some of the shenanigans going on behind the scenes with their money. That was about it. Now they were armed with some additional information and tactics to perhaps better protect their investment, as well as help ensure that, if they did invest, everything would be above board. Sometime later, I heard that the CEO pulled the entire company into the conference room and showed them a new one. He was furious because the investor had somewhat done what I suggested. They had dropped their investment from $15 million to $5 million and had come up with some sort of blanket order or something along those lines. I'm not quite sure, but in essence, it meant a $10 million loss in the mind of the CEO. He's a bit of a fat slob, so it's quite unfortunate that he didn't just have a heart attack right then and there. Not surprising, in the process, the investor was denied the board seat, and one can only guess why, dirty secrets and all. In fact, one of the board members that the CEO did bring on the board had already done time for defrauding his clients. A marriage made in heaven, I guess. So, not necessarily meant as a revenge, but sweet nonetheless. The company basically lost $10 million because of what they did to me. They were all but expecting this money. Had they not laid me off, I probably wouldn't have even thought about putting the investors' interest above that of the corrupt company. In the end, surprising to no one, the investor eventually got majorly screwed by the unscrupulous startup company anyways. The two companies had some disagreements about their distribution agreement, and the investor ended up having to pay a major settlement to the startup company after a contentious mediation. But never fear, don't screw with the Fortune 500. As the startup company was starting to gasp its last breath, they were working on a promising deal with another company they had identified as a major potential customer, one that would put them back on the track to financial success and further line the CEO's dirty pockets. Well, the Fortune 500 company got wind of this deal, bought the other company, and then shut down the deal. That's ninja-level revenge. So, in the end, 2 nuclear revenges for the price of 1. I couldn't have been happier to hear about the karmic justice once again hitting the company. Now, the company is all but dead. All physical assets went to auction. The CEO is milking the last few dollars out of the account, but because our SEC, or Securities Exchange Commission, is all but worthless, he'll start another venture and the cycle will repeat itself. The sad thing is that the CEO, in my humble opinion, makes Elizabeth Holmes, the CEO of Theranos, look like Mother Teresa. I pray that one day they do a Netflix docuseries exposing all that went on at the mess of a company. I can guarantee you it will be quite a hit. Buy my program when you fire me? No? Okay. I was employed at a rather large factory, which is one of the largest plant-based companies in the world, recently bought by an investment firm not so long ago. Anyways, I developed a program which was used at the factory. It could tell whenever any machines were not running, even if it was due to a manual stop or anything else. My program knew the reason why the machine was idling. This program made it so much easier for the entire factory. Workers were happy because they didn't need to do any manual work and write down every time the machine stopped. Lead up to about a year ago. The factory appoints a new chief. All the old employees that were in a leader position were let go because it was time for, quote, new blood to come in, end quote. There was a lot of talk about selling off parts of the factory, including machines and so on. This included programs that I had developed, including the program that identified whenever a machine stopped. I developed this program on my spare time. I showed it to the old management and they liked it enough that they wanted to use it on every station in the factory. Every machine was to use this program, and all that had to be done was for the program to be maintained weekly. This was around 5 years ago or so. When the newly appointed factory chief wanted to let the old employees, me included, leave, it was not known that I was the person behind that program. Anyways, at my meeting with HR and the factory chief, I said that I was willing to sell them the program and teach someone how to maintain the program. The factory chief laughed in my face and said that it was company property and that it was simply their program and not mine. I offered to show them the source code and everything, but it led up to the point to where if I was to tamper with the program before my departure, they would sue me. I was officially let go. 2-month countdown began, and after 2 months, I was free. After a week or so, they noticed problems with the program. It would stop loading, stop registering stops, and it would mislabel stops. I knew that this was when the fun was about to begin. After about a month, I was called into the office and was told that I had tampered with the program because it had suddenly stopped working. I let them know that someone had to maintain it. I was ordered to teach someone how to do that job, and I told them, well, after you pay me for the program rights. They wouldn't budge, and I was told to return to work. When I had a week left, I strolled around the factory floor for a while and noticed that no stations were running my program anymore. I asked some operators why that was, and they told me it just stopped working. Now we need to fill out forms every time the machine stops manually. I shrugged and told them to thank the factory chief. I left after that week. I got a phone call about a month after I left where they begged me to sell them the rights and teach someone how to maintain it. I never sold them that program. Instead, I sold an improved version to another factory nearby, where I am now employed. Now, I see some people say that I'm in the wrong based on US law. Just editing here to let you know that this didn't take place in the US. I made the program during my spare time at home, on my own computer. After introducing the program to the former factory chief, I was allowed to try it out on one machine and test it. The maintenance was done on my office computer, and after a few months, I was allowed to roll it out for the entire factory. It wasn't done overnight. There was lots of debugging to do. I have not heard anything from the company for nearly a year, so it would be weird for them to just suddenly come after me now. Just wanted to make that clear. This sounds like a classic case of, we're the company and we're going to do it right. Oh, we need to listen to the people that work there on the ground floor. Have you ever seen this happen? Let me know. Fire me for speaking up, enjoy going out of business, posted by LOL What Mufflers. Many years ago, I worked at an automotive repair shop that was owned by a very nasty person. This person actually had 2 shops that he ran, and the best way I can describe him was as a tyrant. Both shops had cameras, and he would watch us work from the comfort of his home. If he saw something he didn't like, such as taking a 5-minute smoke break or not sweeping for a half a minute during downtime, or if he just wanted to bust balls, he would call the shop and harass us. Or, better yet, at times, show up and harass us in person. In addition, he would regularly berate us for no reason, threaten to not pay us because the shops weren't busy, and would have an absolute meltdown if you dared question his authority. It was spectacular in the worst of ways. After working with him for a few months and dealing with his shenanigans and getting sick of pointless arguments with him, I started reconsidering my employment there. Around the same time, the owner decided to move me from one shop to the other, really for no reason other than likely to try to push me out, as that was what he did with a few people that I'd already worked with. Odd coincidence being that I had not discussed my thoughts of leaving with anyone, but I digress. I genuinely disliked the idea of working at this other shop. It was older and a bit run down, plus it was in a pretty terrible area with high crime. But I wanted to line something up elsewhere before I jumped ship, so I made the move. This is where the beginning of the end started for old Mr. Owner. Once I got settled into the new shop, I got to talking with my fellow technicians. As it turned out, the owner was unsurprisingly an anti-race scumbag, and every single one of the employees at this location, aside from me, was African American. I'll spare you the details, but let's just say it's a miracle that the owner came into the shop, said what he said, and walked out breathing. In addition, he would regularly send people home with no pay for the day just to be a butt. This went on for a few weeks, him coming by, being nasty to all of us, and I was over it, and I was just about to leave as I had lined up other employment. The other techs were also over it. I went to give the owner my 2-week notice via phone, discreetly, which I should have known wasn't a great idea. And instead of discussing it like a human, he decided to come down and talk face to face. Well, our friend was so incensed that I put my notice in that he forced me to clock out and go home, and also forced 2 other techs who decided to stand up for me to do the same. I decided that I had enough of this guy's crap, and that not only did he deserve to have some kind of reciprocation against him, but the other techs deserved better than to continually be walked on. So I filed a complaint with the Department of Labor and outlined everything. Within a few days, they launched an investigation, and of course, the owner found out who filed the complaint and called the shop and gave me heck about it, stupidly, because the phones he had were on recorded lines. Guess who I had request to listen to that conversation? In the end, I was terminated by him prior to my 2 weeks being up, as were the 2 techs who stood behind me. I filed for unemployment, which he fought me on by filing appeals with the judge, then not showing up 3 times in a row. This prompted the judge to bar him from requesting appeals against me and granting me full unemployment pay. Months later, I got a written letter from him extending an apology and offer to work for him again. 2 months later, I got a letter from the DOL, Department of Labor, saying that the investigation was closed and that he had been found guilty of multiple charges and was barred from operating a shop or any other business in the state for several years. Fire me from my job with no notice? I'll ruin your entire company. Posted by Acrobatic Ad 2952. So start of December, I was let go of my job because they didn't have the time to train me for the job role. I needed to take out a loan to survive as it took me 3 weeks to find something new. I was hired for customer service administrator role, and as I'd never done that type of work, I was told that I'd be given full training on the job. The girls in the office never bothered, and I simply learned the job myself. I was told my performance was more than they expected, but suddenly I was called in the office at 8:30 a.m. when I arrived and told they were really sorry, but they didn't have the time to train me, so I would be let go immediately with no warning or notice, and I was completely shocked by this. To add, my contract stated that I was to be given 28 days notice of termination. The company I worked for uses government grants as a form of payment, so they would regularly claim that they had done certain things they haven't to make more profits from the government, such as forging signatures and lying about what work they've done to gain more funding. Basically, we get funding from the government for providing services to lower income customers. That's all I can say. I was involved in a different department, but shared an office with the department responsible for lying about profits. It's a small company, and the director would constantly hassle them to forge signatures as we can get the jobs through quicker, and if we had an audit, he would go to prison for what was being done. So, when I got laid off, not by a manager, but someone who worked same level in my department, I was absolutely livid that they dragged me in a 60 to 80 minute drive for me to leave 2 minutes later. I got home and immediately called the fraud whistleblower helpline. Nothing came of this until a week later when they wanted more details. The thing is, I'm very good at being silent and taking in my surroundings. I was able to tell them which accounts had been forged and lied about. I also had considerable email evidence of what had been going on. So, long story short, majority have lost their jobs, including the people who couldn't be bothered to train me and went running to the director to fire me, including the director who is now being investigated for fraud and facing time in prison and a massive fine. Always live by the mantra, mess around and find out. So, you want us to adhere to the company hierarchy? Sure, posted by Zokoman. So I work as a mechanic in a sewage treatment plant, and it's a very laid-back job. In fact, 3 out of 8 hours was spent not working. I know it sounds like we were just a bunch of freeloaders, but it's because the tasks we perform are simple, and we do our best to do them ASAP. Anyway, the hierarchy in our plant is quite complicated, but the most important thing is that as a part of a mechanical department, our only supervisor on site is our master. At least I think that's the English translation. And both plant manager and plant master are not our supervisors, yet they, as well as other workers, asked us to carry out some jobs for them, which we gladly agreed to do, even despite most of them being out of our range of duty. You know, welding racks back together, installing a new faucet, and so on. Most of the time, we weren't doing anything else anyway, but sometimes we were preoccupied with our own tasks. Still, the plant master always told us that his tasks were more important and to just leave what we were doing for some other day. Due to this, many of our old tasks were left for another day, which because of constant requests were left sitting for months. Still, it was always his jobs that had the priority. Now is the right time to address the tense situation we had with the plant master. He's best buddies with the manager, usually blaming all the shortcoming of his team on us. Stuff like something not being cleaned, sick, stuff that's not mechanical failure, stuff that's simply not important enough, or stuff that's beyond our competencies and should be taken care of by a specialist company. He also had this very annoying habit of rummaging through our tools, taking parts and using our machinery without asking. It's very annoying, but whatever, it's important to keep a good relationship in work. But then he dropped the bomb. He had the list of all our old tasks that were left unfinished. The list wasn't that long, by the way, about 8 things, 3 of which were outside of our competencies, and said that the manager and CEO will be waiting in the conference room to give us a lecture and to take away our bonuses. The meeting went very roughly. It started with the CEO saying, "You can say goodbye to your bonus this month," and then proceeded to give us a lecture about the importance of our tasks. Then he kept blabbering about us, threatening our master, the plant master, being the only supposed witness, and so on and so on. When the CEO was talking about possible solutions, the plant master did the worst calculation of his life. He proposed adhering to the company structure and proper workflow. Well, we didn't want to oppose since we knew what that means. We talked this over with our master, and now every time the plant manager and master want something to be done, we reply with, "We don't take jobs in the corridors. We have our jobs to do, sorry. We can't afford to leave what we're doing. We have it planned for today." Or, "Does our master know about this? We cannot do anything without him ordering it to be done." By now, no one has been to our workshop for 4 weeks. No extra jobs, no side jobs, nothing. Only 2 tasks a day that usually take 30 minutes each with a team of 5. And it's all by the book. We definitely respect the company's structure and have a proper workflow, focusing on our tasks. And by the way, most of the backlogs were also due to stuff breaking down, which is mostly due to a faulty infrastructure. Most of the pipes are clogged with sedimentation from PIX, PAX, which are coagulants, and require thorough cleaning and rebuilding. But I guess it's cheaper to simply replace a pump which had to push the same amount of sewage through pipes that have been narrowed by 2 times at this point. Those poor pumps. And yeah, the pipework and technology is the responsibility of the plant master and plant manager. I destroyed my boss Karen. She'll regret messing with me after this. Click the video on your screen, you don't want to miss this one, and I will see you there.